Welcome to CLNS Media's Draft Central coverage. I'm Bobby Kravitsky here with Evan Lazar and Taylor Kyles. The Patriots take a wide receiver in the first round of the draft. The top three prospects at the position, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, and Jerry Jeudy, are not considered realistic options, which means if they move up a few spots or hold firm at pick 23, most likely they will be deciding between Justin Jefferson and Denzel Mims. Evan, if that's who it comes down to, who's the better option for the Patriots?
Well, I think the Patriots' MO or their past history would suggest that they would have Denzel Mims over Justin Jefferson, but I think that Justin Jefferson should be the guy because of their past history at this position hasn't really worked out too well at the top of the draft. If they pick Justin Jefferson, he will be the most polished receiver that Bill Belichick has ever drafted. We're talking about the most pro-ready guy to just plug and play him into the offense and have him produce. I know he's played mostly in the slot, and that's what people hear about him, the option routes, the ability to stretch the field horizontally and do over routes and other types of things that will get him big chunk plays. But if you watch his 2018 tape, he has more routes on the outside on that tape. So I do think he has the ability to go inside and outside. But this is a guy that's an absolute technician of a route runner, especially at the top of the route, where he's really able to read out route coverages and different types of leverages and figure out what's the best way for me to break inside or out or go up the field or do whatever he's got to do. And it's just the little details. We talk about this all the time with guys like N'Keal Harry as to why they're not succeeding in the Patriots system. Justin Jefferson has all those little details down. He might not be the fastest or the most explosive receiver on tape, but his pacing and the timing in his routes is really, it's part of his route running, I would call it. I'm trying to think of the right words to use, but it's part of his game that he used those types of pacing and slowing down his routes to be able to be there in the right time and the right type of pacing for Joe Burrow. So Burrow's looking long for Jamar Chase, then he's got to come down to his check down option of Justin Jefferson. If Justin Jefferson's running his route 100 miles an hour right out of the gate, then by the time Burrow gets to that check down, he's going to be out of the break and out of the picture. So he has tons of pacing. He times that route down perfectly, and he's a technician in the middle of the field. That's why I go Jefferson over Denzel Mims.
Maybe this is a situation where I'm just ready to be heard again, and with Patriots history of drafting the athletic guys early on, but I'm going to go with Denzel Mims personally, mostly because while Justin Jefferson is a very polished and refined player, I love Denzel Mims' upside, and he's someone where I think you can see that he's starting to build in terms of being a route runner. There are some limitations. He's a very upright player. You don't really see him sink his hips and really beat the drum when he's making cuts, which can kind of hurt him when he's trying to create separation. But the speed that he has, his catch radius, like Jefferson, he's fantastic in terms of his ball skills and his ability to dominate at the catch point. When you compare him to someone like Josh Gordon, another former Baylor guy, I think they're very similar in the fact that they can use their size very well. I think he can work the slants a little bit better. You didn't see him run that a ton at Baylor, at least have a lot of success. So I'd like to see how he would do that when he gets to the professional, when he becomes a pro. But when you look at Josh Gordon's route tree, the way they tried to use him in New England, where they threw him a lot of deep balls, although I think at that point in his career, that's not really where he excelled. That's more I think Denzel Mims can give you a ton of production. I think he could also work the intermediate part of the field on those digs. Maybe try not to give him very angular cuts because, like I said, he does struggle a bit with the lower half flexibility on a consistent basis. But with all the receivers on the Patriots roster who really more fit the role of a Z or a slot type player, I think Denzel Mims could give you a formidable presence outside.
I agree with a lot of what you said, Taylor. I think the biggest concern that I have with Denzel Mims is a linear kind of flexibility to him as a player. And I always look at receivers, and the first thing that I want to see is fluidity, the ability to get in and out of a break, the ability to move guys off the line of scrimmage and press coverage, and just have that suddenness and that hip flexibility to be able to put the foot in the ground and cut in a different direction. And I see too much linear movement from Denzel Mims. He's too upright for me as a route runner. One thing that he does specifically that I had noticed in his tape is that he runs upright into his breaks from off coverage, which gives away the fact that a break is coming. So if you run with your pads down full force, the defensive back, when he's coming at you, he's not going to know if you're breaking that route off or if you're going to continue downfield on the go ball. When those pads start to rise up and you start to see like a gather from the receiver, then you know that some sort of break is coming. And an NFL cornerback, you tell that to Stephon Gilmore, for example, he's going to be sitting on that all day long, waiting for the receiver to stand up and get into his break. So I think that's my biggest concern with Mims, is that he's just too upright and stiff for me. I like to see the guys that are loose in the hips and are able to really explode out of their cuts.
Mims brings more value because he's an X receiver, and he is improving as a route runner. I think that's worth noting. He also checks all the boxes in terms of the physical traits you want at the position. He's got a track background, so you know that the speed is for real. He uses his frame well to box out defenders. He's got great hands. So I certainly would be happy about that pick. But in this Sophie's choice, I think the Patriots, if they're taking a wide receiver, whether it's at 23 or moving up a few spots to get one, that Justin Jefferson is the best player available when discussing these two in a vacuum. And so I like the idea of going ahead and getting Jefferson. And part of that discussion, and what I'm hoping the Patriots don't get bogged down in, is what the roster looks like right now, because Julian Edelman, as important as he is for this team, we don't know how many good years he has left and how many of those will be in a Patriots uniform. We think he'll spend his entire career in New England, but it can't be guaranteed. An injury can happen to anyone at any time, and he's starting to get long in the tooth. So I wouldn't let that factor be a part of why the Patriots steer away from Jefferson in favor of Mims or anyone else. Another factor, though, and this does run a bit contrary to that, but I still think that it's more relevant because it's a younger player in N'Keal Harry, who they just spent a first-round pick on last year at the draft. I think they need to understand who meshes well with him, who can they build this budding wide receiver tandem with that complements Harry, and Harry can complement whichever prospect they're taking in this year's draft. So I look at N'Keal as more of a chess piece than a true X receiver. There's a couple routes like back shoulders, like fades and jump balls that he can go up and get in the red zone that I want him running from that spot, but I primarily want to see him at the Z, try him down the seam, almost like a tight end in that sense, slot fades, and then, of course, the quick hitters like the ends arounds, more screen passes than he got last season when he came onto the scene. So I think that's important. But, Evan, if the Patriots move back in the first round, so they take themselves out of the Justin Jefferson, Denzel Mims conversation, who's the player that makes the most sense for you in that case?
Well, kind of going off of your N'Keal point here about him playing more like a tight end type role or between the numbers role. If you want to go back to 2017 and try to recreate what they were going to have with Brandon Cooks, Julian Edelman, and Rob Gronkowski, then Jalen Reagor from TCU is your guy, right? Because he's the guy that's the burner on the outside, and you have the top off the defense guy in Reagor, you have the intermediate level in N'Keal Harry, and you have the underneath guy in Julian Edelman. Those are defense. Good luck trying to have a corner that can match up against all three of those types of skill sets also all at the same time. I think the thing that stick out to me two things. One, his ability to battle for the ball down the field is impressive. He can go up and catch the ball. He has a 42-inch vertical, and he knows how to use it on tape to be able to go up and get jump balls, contested catches, doing all of that at 5'11". That's what separates him, to me, from a guy like Cooks or a guy like Philip Dorsett, who are two, kind of redundant skill sets the Patriots have had in this offense. Those two guys, I think, had a little bit less fight in them at the catch point down the field, and the ability to really use physicality and box guys out down the field and the willingness to be able to do that. The second thing is when I watch burners on tape, I want to see if they make cornerbacks uncomfortable. Are the cornerbacks thinking about the fact that this guy is going to run past me if I'm not careful? So do you see guys opening early towards their hips, opening early to get into a back pedal and then get into a full sprint to be able to keep up with him? Are they playing off coverage, or are they bailing a lot against him? What I see with Reagor is a lot of cornerbacks up against him in press man coverage. They are bailing out awfully quickly in order to protect themselves against the deep ball, and that allows him to transition to slants and unders and comebacks and things like that underneath the coverage that he's pretty good at doing. And the one skill I think is really underrated about his game is his ability to create after the catch. This is a guy that got a lot of screen passes in that TCU offense, created a ton of yards after the catch, and is really kind of elusive ability to jump cut out of tackles later on in the play and deeper down the field. I think all those things kind of suggest to me that he's a little bit of a different player than Brandon Cooks is, even though he has that similar explosiveness that garners a lot of the Cooks kind of comparisons. But again, it goes back to your original question, Bobby, of pairing him with N'Keal Harry and Julian Edelman, what already exists here. I think that Reagor does offer a different but really good skill set that plays off of those two guys really well.
And I think there's a guy who's actually very similar in when you mentioned making cornerbacks uncomfortable, being someone who's a threat after the catch, who actually used to play with N'Keal Harry. That's Brandon Aiyuk. Although he is fast, I love his burst when he's making his cuts. And you're seeing that he's developing as a route runner in terms of attacking leverage, getting in defenders' blind spots. And where he's dangerous is once he gets defenders kind of guessing, he has that burst to create a lot of separation, which is really the buzzword right now in New England. We want somebody who can create separation with athleticism as well as route running savvy. And I think that Aiyuk maybe is a year away from being what he truly could be, but he reminds me of Emmanuel Sanders and someone who has the athleticism to create the separation, even though he may not be the biggest guy. He's about 6 feet tall, but I love how he has the ability to make cornerbacks uncomfortable in that way. And after the catch, I don't think there's anybody in this draft who's better than him other than maybe CeeDee Lamb, because like I said, with that burst, when the creation that he already creates, he has the speed to take it to the house on any play. I think he's someone who you could manufacture touches for if he's not quite comfortable enough at the pro level as a route runner. And on top of that, he gets a lot of flack for the fact that he ran a very limited route tree, similar to N'Keal Harry when he was at Arizona. But as I said, I think he's starting to develop the tools where you can see he has the ability to really take advantage of defenders and manipulate them, get him in spots where he wants to be so he can take advantage and really get himself open.
Yeah, the downfield breaks for Aiyuk are awesome, right? You know, he's got a lot of really good post corners, that type of stuff on his tape where he's really shaking guys at the top of the route. But I think what you just pointed to, the fact that he had a limited route tree at Arizona State that really mimicked what they were doing with N'Keal the year before. We're talking a lot of go balls, a lot of posts, and a lot of screen passes behind the line of scrimmage. That was pretty much his, I think it was about 70% of his production came off of those three routes is the PFF stat. So that tells me that the transition for Aiyuk is going to look pretty similar to what the transition looked like for N'Keal. So we might have a little bit of a learning curve with that player as we're still trying to teach N'Keal the things he needs to learn to be able to produce at a high level at the NFL. So it's kind of like a boomer bust pairing to put those two guys back together. But I think that both Reagor and Aiyuk offer a little bit more explosiveness on the outside and a little bit more of a different skill set than what we're looking at with guys like Mims and Harry, who I think are a little bit more similar.
And I think one thing I'm trying not to scare myself off, because with N'Keal, obviously there's lessons you learn from every draft when you evaluate a prospect and then you see how they transition to the next level. But when I look, I do see a better understanding of route running with Aiyuk than I saw with N'Keal Harry, which is really what stands out to me because, you know, you can't really blame a player for their role in an offense, and clearly that's just how they use their X receivers. And I did see the ability that Aiyuk understood where he needed to get his landing points and how to get defenders turn where they weren't supposed to be. So again, like I completely understand, it's something that you're going to have to build on with him, and something that is a bit of a red flag just because you need the experience to really feel comfortable. But I think it's one of those situations where if you understand the concept of what you're doing, it's going to be much easier for you to catch on. And again, N'Keal wasn't someone who I really saw use manipulation in his routes. It was more winning with physicality, just his huge size and speed that translated better in college than it did to the NFL. But Aiyuk, I think, has more tools coming in that could possibly give him a better chance to really thrive in the professional level, even if it does take a bit of time.
Well, we know this wide receiver class is loaded, so plenty of intriguing options for the Patriots if they take one in the first round. For Evan Lazar and Taylor Kiles, I'm Bobby Kravitsky. For all of our Patriots-related content, including Evan's big board featuring the 50 players who would fit best in New England, check out clnsmedia.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Patriots Press Pass.